Okie dokie. It is Sunday, October 15th. This is the Joy of Doing. And the topic for today is joyful despite external chaos. So I thought I'd bring this up because this week in the news, there were some negative things happening in the world. That's not unlike any other week really in the news, except that, big news. There's war in the Middle East again. Like it's not like the first time that's happened, right? But I got really caught up in it. I was doom scrolling the news. I was really paying attention to all these details. And I'm not going to get into the details. I'm not going to discuss all of that here. That's irrelevant to what we're doing, except to say I'm not a really big fan of when people are killing each other. That's just I don't like that. I wish people wouldn't do that, right? And war itself is an example of the first anti-principle in the Joy of Doing system here. The anti-principles being principles of stressful doing. If we want to make the world a more stressful place to live in, we should force people to do things. That's the anti-principle number one, right? And war, there's nothing more dramatic a version of that than war, forcing people to do things. You have to do what I say, or else, bam, you're dead. I'm killing you, right? So that's under threat of violence. That's the absolute most extreme version of forcing. Of course, there's subtler versions of forcing where we force ourselves or people in relationships and so on to do what we say. And the opposite principle, principle number one in my Joy of Doing system here, is increase your sense of choice, which got me thinking, is there a way to apply this principle or these principles to the larger world, not just inside of ourselves, not just in our relationships, but when big issues happen in the world that we're bummed out about, right? These things seem to happen more and more, from pandemics to war to global warming. And there's sort of two responses people have with that: either doom scroll, get really involved, or be like, I can't pay attention to that. It's too much. Right. And I certainly do both of those, depending on the issue of the day. So is there a way to apply the same principles to create a better, larger world? That would be kind of cool. And this applies to your own individual psychology when thinking about these things too. So as I was thinking about that, as I was considering these principles, started with the first principle, I realized I wasn't just upset about what was happening in the world. It wasn't that the external things in the world, in the Middle East, with the bombs dropping and so on, it wasn't that caused me to feel bummed out. That caused me to feel sad or angry. If there's a thing in the middle, right? There's the external world, then there's my interpretation of these events or my attitude, and then there's the feeling. And it happens like that. And we usually delete that middle thing. If someone treats us badly or something happens in the news, we just feel immediately, we have some feeling, unconscious, right? It just happens automatically. But there's this process that's happening in the middle, this interpretation of events that is actually causing the feeling ultimately. So first I remembered that, and we sometimes say that in NLP, is the map is not the territory. The map is not the territory. So our representation of reality is not reality itself. Or the version of that I like is the menu is not the meal. Like if you go into the Cheesecake Factory here in the United States, and they've got pictures of delicious food in the menu, and you confuse the menu and the meal, you like start cutting up the menu and eating the plastic menu. You wouldn't do that, right? That would be disgusting. It wouldn't be nourishing. But we often forget that the way we're interpreting events, we're thinking about them, or the attitude we have towards them, we conflate that with somebody else's behavior, or we conflate that with what's happening in the world. And we think, you're making me feel this way. You're making me angry. Rather than I'm making myself angry based on my interpretation of what you have done. And that would take a lot more responsibility, right? Because it all happens so fast. It all happens so fast. So first, I came to this realization, right, map is not the territory. Whatever I'm feeling, it's based on a true story, based on events out there in the world, but it's really, I'm doing it first. And I can own that as the creator of my experience, right? So I'm not a victim to what's happening out there. I'm the creator of my experience. I'm the creator of my emotional experience. Now, I don't know how I'm doing that. It's unconscious, it's automatic, but I'm taking responsibility for that first. And then started applying the principles, sort of analyzing my experience through these principles. First thing being like, am I in have to mode here? And the answer is yes, absolutely. What do I believe has to happen? Well, I believe those people out there have to stop doing what they're doing. They have to stop killing each other, right? They have to stop dropping bombs. They have to stop whatever. What's cool about, or what's not cool about that? I don't have control over any of that, right? Uh, they actually don't have to stop doing what they're doing out there. They can keep doing what they're doing and probably still will. And they probably don't really care what the opinion of a random American person who they never met thinks about what they're doing. And they wouldn't really listen anyway if I said it. So it's not that I have any power to do anything about that stuff. I still have a strong preference, a desire, a want for things to be peaceful. But I'm in have to mode when I think that has to stop. And have to or what? That's the real question, right? Like you have to do what I say or what? Well, or I'll commit violence against you because you're being violent, right? Isn't that the whole problem with war in the first place? Right? You have to stop what you're doing, or I'm going to kill you. Oh yeah, well you have to stop what you're doing, or I'm going to kill you, and then we go at it, right? So it's really the same principle: force people to do things to the extreme. And when I'm in that, maybe I'm not going to be violent against the violent people, but I'm still kind of doing that same thing. Like you have to stop. You have to stop doing that. Or maybe it's you have to stop doing that, or I'll be unhappy. I'll make myself unhappy. It's another version of that, right? You have to stop doing what you're doing, or I'm going to be upset until you stop. Like, well, who does that help? Does it help them? Does it make the other person stop? Does it make me happy? It's not helping anybody. But that's the sort of thing we end up doing when we're caught in these stress states. So there's also another version of this, which is when bad things are happening to the world, I have to feel bad about them. I have to feel bad about them. There's no other possibility, no choice. I can't say, I care, but I don't have to feel bad. Like, no, that's not an option. But that's weird because there's absolutely things sometimes that happen in the world. And I'm like, wow, I wish that wasn't happening, but I don't feel particularly bad. It's like, I would like to do something that changes that. I care about it, but I'm not stressed about it. And I know that's possible. I know that's possible. Or maybe in your own life, sometimes somebody will do something, and maybe a friend comes to you and it's like, I can't believe this person's doing this thing. And you can like empathize, but you're also like, I'm not totally sure why you're upset. Like, it's okay. They're going to do what they're going to do. Right. Maybe you've had that experience before. I certainly have of like, I can totally empathize with you. I can see your point of view. And if it happened to me, I would be like, whatever, no big deal. Right. So it's not that the external thing is making us feel that way. It's that we're like, it has to be different. The world has to be different than it is. You have to be different than you have to do something different, or I'm going to feel bad. And that's optional. So what if actually people have choice, which I think is probably true? What if the people in the governments of the world don't have to do what I say? And they can kind of just do what they're doing. I think that's probably more how it actually is. What if, the people with the guns can do the things that they're doing? I wish they wouldn't, but when I step into that, I start to feel like, okay, well, that's true. And I can have more acceptance, even though it's not what I want. I can have more acceptance about this whole thing. And my nervous system starts to relax. Like, okay, right. It's not actually in my control. It's not actually up to me. So by applying this first principle, increase your sense of choice. It can increase my sense of choice. I have more of a sense of choice around how I feel about these things. And the people out there doing the things I don't like, they can choose to do that. Right? They can choose to do that. I prefer they didn't do the things I don't like, but they can do that. And thankfully, my job isn't to run the whole world. Thank goodness. Because I have enough difficulty as it is just running my world. And that's my job. Right. Now that said, we can go beyond this first principle too, right? We can also go into the second principle here of this whole worldview. So the second principle, the anti-principle, is delete the possibilities. No other possibilities And this is something that I've seen showing up in this whole sort of scenario going on right now. People are like, you have to do this or this, right? You either support this group or that group. You either support, fighting this way or fighting that way, either killing these people or killing those people. Whoa, those are the only possibilities. There's nothing else from that kind of state. It's like peace isn't possible, right? It's not but I would like this third option ideally, of peace. I don't know how we get there, but I think there's probably a lot of things we can experiment with. We could try a lot of different things to maybe get there. So from this second principle, see the possibilities. See the possibilities. So if we can see more possibilities in some situation, we can get into can mode, right? There are things we can do. Now, I can't control the whole world. I can't control people's behavior, but I do have a choice. I do have ways in which I can either contribute to the problem or the solution, whatever that happens to be. So, for instance, in college, I first learned about global warming and I was devastated. I was like, we're destroying the planet. We're all going to die. And I was getting really depressed and wrapped up in this whole, it's a real serious issue. It's still going on, right? We haven't solved the problem yet, 20 something years later. And it's easy to, go down a spiral of depression and hopelessness around all this stuff. But that's can't mode. That's deleting the possibilities of what we can do. So luckily around that time, I also found Stoicism, the ancient Greco-Roman philosophy of Stoicism. And there's an idea in Stoicism that has become very popularized, which is some things, they're in your power. Some things are not in your power, right? Like the serenity prayer in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I can never remember the details, but it's basically the same distinction. Some things are up to you, some things aren't. Wisdom to know the difference. That's a good thing, right? And so what I did is I took a sheet of paper and I wrote at the top 2 columns. And on the left column, I wrote, not up to me, not in my power, not in my control, right? The right column, in my power or in my control. And in the left column there, the not in my power, I wrote all the things I was stressed out about. So like global warming, deforestation, but then all these like personal issues I had that I was stressed out about. I just wrote a whole list of those. And then in the right column, I wrote something corresponding to the thing in the other column that was in my power. Like global warming, if I could solve the problem, I would do it right now. Right? I would just take care of it. But it's not up to me. It's like, so what is in my power there? And I thought about things. And I was like, well, you could like drive less or, various kinds of things, give money to organizations that are working on that. There's little things you can do. Now I'm just a drop in the bucket though. It's hopeless. Why even bother? No, because it's what I can do. Right. It's my part in the whole, which is not very big. It's small, but it's something that I can do. And so that simple exercise of realizing there are possibilities, there are things that I personally can do for these things that are not totally my power. That was a really helpful thing. So, for instance, one of the things that sometimes people do with things in the world they don't like is maybe they give a call to a representative in Congress, right? They call up somebody that they voted for and they say, hey, I would like you to do this other thing, right? So there's several ways we could do that. One is in have to mode. You have to do what I say. I voted you in, right? Try to force them, threaten them to do what you want. It's kind of aggressive way. Now you can do that, right? People do that. That's for sure. Whole activist movements run on anger and fear and despair. And what happens to those movements is they also burn people out very quickly. Someone might very deeply care about an issue, but just can't handle it after a while because this stress state is not sustainable. It's not sustainable to be stressed out all the time. So we can call up our elected representatives and demand they change, or we could call up our representatives and say, you know what, you don't have to do what I say, at least internally, right? Or in this mode of like, this person does not have to do what I say. Now, I might be able to provide a good argument or some information or like a moving speech or something that might persuade them. But ultimately, it's not up to me, right? The person I voted for doesn't have to do what I say. They're hearing from a lot of other people. Like they're making the best choice they can based on everything they've got. Similarly, a lot of people like don't vote because they're like, well, my vote doesn't matter. It's just a drop in the bucket. It's all hopeless. The world's never going to change. And this is deleting the possibilities, can't mode. There's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do. System's broken. It's all corrupt. I totally understand all those arguments. And I feel that way sometimes too. And, voting is something we can do. We can do it. Does it work? I don't know. I mean, it changes things a little bit. It's a little drop in the bucket. I do it. But you don't have to, right? You still have a choice. You can choose to do that or not. Like there's nothing we can do to force you to do that. But sort of the idea here is this can mode, seeing the possibilities. There's something we can do. And sometimes that feels good to just do your part, whatever that is. So wrapping this back around, we don't have to control the world. That's good because we can't. We don't have to stop people from doing the things out there in the world that we don't like, because that's good because it's not our responsibility. And we don't have to feel helpless about it either, or feel like there's nothing we can do. It's best we can do is just accept reality. Like, well, accepting reality is a good starting point. Remembering that people out there can do what they do, that's a good place to start. That don't have to. Increasing your own sense of choice. I don't have to feel bad about it. Increasing other people's sense of choice. They're going to make their own choices. That's a good place to start. And then we can also become more empowered. We can step into seeing more possibilities for change in the world. It's possible that people could do something different. I mean, they can right now. Like, it's not either or. It's not either you have to do this or that. Either you have to fight or be passive. No. There's way more options than that. Thousands, hundreds, millions of possibilities. And if we can't see them yet, that's just a poverty of imagination, right? We can work on that. We can increase our skill of seeing possibilities in any given situation. And we can even go beyond that, because there's a lot of problems with the world. You might have noticed. There's a lot of things that could use some improvement out there. And we don't have to take them all on at once, right? That's principle 6, limit work and progress, not try to change everything all at once right now. Right? There might be one or two things you really care about out there in the world. Maybe it's saving the whales. I don't know. Really care about whales. You love whales. Whales are amazing. So maybe you focus most of your attention on that, and you're like, I know there's lots of other things out there, but there's also lots of other people working on this stuff, and we're in it together. So there's the idea of principle 7, seeking support. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to change the whole world by ourselves. We can join in with other people who are trying to do some good thing, whatever that good thing is. It could be local in your, in your neighborhood, even. It doesn't have to be global. And we don't have to do everything all at once. And we can do it in a way that's attempting to be win-win. That's good for everybody. At least going for that. At least imagining a possibility where everybody is getting what they want and need, rather than the anti-principle dominate or be dominated. I gotta beat them. Like, well, what if we could all get what we deeply need? Maybe not on the surface level strategy, right? But what we deeper need, our deeper needs. And as we go about doing these sorts of things, we're probably going to try solutions that don't work. That's just the reality, right? We're probably going to, try something to create peace in the Middle East, and it's not going to work. That's okay. If we're really having an experimental attitude, if we could really step into, that's okay. Like, can we transform failure into feedback with forgiveness? That would be world changing, would it not? If we really did athlete on a collective level, oh man, that would be wild. And if we made even minor progress on changing the world in a positive direction, could we celebrate that? Could we take in the good of that? That would be interesting. That would be very different. Usually, as groups of people trying to make a difference in the world, we kind of reject anything that's not this total change for the whole world. And that doesn't get us very far, or it certainly isn't very enjoyable. So maybe you don't care about things that happen this week in the world, or you're just kind of like, oh, whatever, it's not my issue. That's fine. Or maybe you care very deeply about it. I don't know. But we can start to apply this to things that you do care about, whatever that is. So think about something Think about something now that you do care about very deeply in the world. That could be, animals. Maybe you care about animals, or you care about, ending racism, or you care about something in the world, some issue in the world. It doesn't have to be one of the standard issues that people argue about. It could be whatever is unique to you. Could be you just want to see more people dance in the world. I don't know, whatever it is. I do want to see more people dance in the world. But whatever it is, if you think about that now, and it kind of bums you out when you think about it, then we might go through these principles real quick and just kind of see, like, is there a different way that's possible to think about this issue, whatever that is that you care about. So we might start with principle one: force people to do things. Is there a way in which you're like, people have to change? God damn it. Right? People need to wake up and think about this and learn about this and stop doing what they're doing and do this other thing. Or else, right? We're going to get them. We're going to shame them. We're going to blame them. I know I'm not perfect at this. To be totally honest, even this week, I was not perfect at this by any means. But if there's a way in which you're doing that, explore for a moment. What would it be like if I realized that people actually have a choice? And if I really honored the autonomy of other people while still being passionate about this issue, while still caring, while still taking action. But if I thought about people actually have a choice here, they don't have to do what I say. Would that change things for you? Would you have more of a choice of how you feel? Maybe still able to act, but without stress. And then think about the second principle here: see the possibilities, getting into can mode. What things really do you see are possible? A better world. If you imagined a better world that didn't have this problem, what would it be? What would it be like? If you go out 50 years into the future and we no longer have that problem collectively, we've solved it. What's that like? What's that utopian world like that we're moving towards, that you want to see happen in the world? And what possibilities emerge for ways we get there? If we imagine that's in the future, how did we get there? What things did we do differently? Because when you can really see the possibilities, it can get you into can mode. I can, we can make it happen. And what aspect of that is in your power or your control? Your tiny little role, not you're going to control the whole world and change everything. But what's your piece of the puzzle? Maybe it's just letting some people know that this is something you care about, or communicating the possibilities to other people, saying, I think it's possible that we have this 50 years from now. I think we can do it. And having that optimism. Who knows? And then, can you imagine collectively people run experiments to try to make the world better in this particular way? And when there's even an experiment run, you can celebrate. Yay, somebody's trying to do this thing to make the world a better place. How cool is that? Whether it works or not, it's an experiment and people are trying to improve things. That's great. Or if you participate in that in some way, celebrating your own involvement. Yay, I did that thing. And then if there's an experiment that doesn't work, let's say whatever that is, the government tries some program to reduce carbon emissions, it doesn't work. Okay. Instead of blaming, shaming, so on, denying failure, just trying more of it, what if we had that experimental attitude of like, okay, let's afflay this. Let's acknowledge that this didn't work without shame or blame. Can we bring forgiveness to it? Ooh, that might be challenging. But what if you could bring compassion and forgiveness, or think, everyone's just doing the best they can here? And then learning, what can we learn from this? So we can take away something to try something differently next time. And then running some new experiment in the future. You might not know what all the details of that are, but if you just imagine that that was the case, that would be kind of interesting, perhaps. And then if we went to principle 5, make the difficult easy. What if it wasn't hard to change the world? What if actually it was the easiest thing in the world to make things better? What if there was a much easier way to do it? Now, we might not know what that is yet, but just kind of opening your mind to possibilities of what if there was a solution here we just outside the box haven't considered before. I could make things much, much easier. Like sometimes I think about this with global warming, and that people often are like, well, we need to change everything throughout all society. It's going to be really hard. We need to sacrifice. And then I hear about all of these advances in materials science, which is engineering new materials that we've never had before that are super efficient, 40 or 100 times more efficient, or lightweight, or something like that. And I think there's got to be something here that could make this easier to transition to renewable energy, or increase the efficiency of things so much that things just change in an easier way. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the puzzle, and it gives me hope. And then what if we could apply principle 6, limit work in progress? What if you don't have to try to focus on all of the world's problems all at once? It's a little too much. But we can sort of chunk it down to the next step of one thing. And you're not the only one working on it, seeking support. Imagine thousands or millions of other people working with you, brilliant people who really know a lot about this thing. And they're working while you sleep because there's people all around the world thinking about this, working on it. Some of them full time. Feeling connected with other people who are also doing this. And then ultimately, in this long term vision, having the world be a place that's more win win, where it's not just I get what I want, now somebody else has to lose for that, but everybody gets more of what they really deeply want and need. At the core, their human needs fulfilled in some way. So I'm going to stop there. Hopefully that was a useful, interesting exercise for you to start to apply these principles both on yourself, with relationships, which I know lots of you are already doing, and then starting to think about the external world, at least through these lenses, could at least make your life more joyful. But who knows? Maybe it could change the world. That's the dream. That's the dream.